the stories of our children getting opportunity to go to college and about mamas and daddies putting nickels and dimes and quarters together to pay tuition. It's about our stories. It's about the hardships and the pain and the suffering. It's about the protests and the marching. It's about the standing. It's about the legislation. It's about all of that. It's our story.
Witness to Grace, a testimony of favor, is a poignant, true life story that chronicles the remarkable journey of W. Franklyn Richardson. From humble and challenging beginnings to honored positions of power and global influence. Witness to Grace gives an intimate portrayal of the rise of one of the most respected religious and civil rights leaders of our time.
A Witness to Grace, the Reverend Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson. Well, let me tell you how excited I am about the opportunity to interview one of my favorite preachers, one of my mentors, and this goes back probably more than 31 years. Most people will not remember you pastoring in the city of Philadelphia. But I remember when I was a young preacher at New Psalmist, hearing you in the pulpit of New Psalmist Baptist Church. So I'm honored to be able to interview the Reverend Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson today. He has exciting news about a new project that he's working on. He's the honored pastor of the Grace Church in Mount Vernon, New York. And we're just going to spend some time casually talking to him because we think you want to get in on this project he's just completed. It's going to be a blessing to your life. So Dr. Richardson, welcome. Tell us about what you've worked on and what you're presenting to the world.
Thank you, Billy. I want to thank you for your friendship and partnership across the years. You've been an example of what ministry ought to be, and you've been very innovative. And we certainly need that in these times that we're facing with the virtual.
I appreciate it.
I just released my memoirs, the journey I've been as a pastor and a person for 7 decades. For 50 years, I've been pastoring churches, and I've been blessed. I've had an exciting journey, which had peaks and valleys, and I have learned from both equally, and they have sustained me and got me to a place where I felt it was important to offer it to the larger community, to boys and girls who are in school and anticipating and envisioning their future, to pastors, young pastors who are developing their ministries, and also senior pastors who have occasion when they hear my story to say amen, because it is their story as well. And so I put together set over my schedule been still busy, but in the midst of it all, and thank you for your encouragement. In the midst of it all, I was able to write a book entitled Witness to Grace, a Testimony of Favor. And this book was written in transit. On the cell phone with one thumb.
Right.
I wrote the book on planes and back of cars, in cars, on the highway, wherever I was, sometime in the middle of the night. And over a 12-month period, I was able to come up with this offering. And it is an offering that focuses on the function and presence of God's grace in my life. And it gave me occasion to point to it, and also hopefully provided a blueprint for others to look at their lives through the prism of grace. Mm-hmm. So sometimes we look at our lives as though we're responsible. It's my hard work. I pulled myself up. I did it.
Right.
But that won't give you joy. That won't give you security.
Right.
But when you see that behind your efforts, and you certainly have to have your efforts, you certainly have to work hard, but behind your efforts is the fingerprints of God, who has orchestrated whatever achievement we had.
Yeah.
And when you can see through that prism, your life becomes optimistic, and you are positive, and you have greater joy, and you realize you have gratitude, because It's not all about you.
Well, you've been such a good example, and I heard you talk about the context of ministry, but you've been such a great example of being able to pollinate so many different spheres: the corporate community, the social political community, the church community, and to do all of those in a way that helped you to stay relevant and to create significant change, not just for our people, but many people don't know you've served on boards that have had influence over sales globally with companies. So everything starts with context. Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about who W. Franklyn Richardson is and what produced this man whose memoirs are worth the rest of us reading.
Well, I guess you have to start with the fact that I started at the absolute bottom of the pile in Philadelphia. I grew up in Philadelphia. I wasn't at the bottom of the pile because I did have two loving parents. There are people who are at the bottom of the pile who have no parents and no support system at all. Mm. That was not my story. I had a loving mother and a father who was so stable and assuring and encouraging, but yet it was a struggle because I never saw myself as being particularly poor, even though we were. Just that poverty is always comparative, it's relative, and it's always what you compared it to. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I started there. I started as I look back, I see how the grace of God showed up in the earliest stages of my life. And I grew up in Philadelphia, nurtured by parents, went on to West Philadelphia High School, I guess is where my story really unfolds, even though I talk about prior to that. It was at West Philadelphia High School that I was told by my counselor that I was not college material. Yeah. And it was devastating when he told me in the context of which I was asking. It was quite a devastating slap. It's amazing that he said to me I wasn't college material when it was, if I wasn't, it's because they didn't prepare me to be college material. Right. They gave me social promotion. And so, but I was determined to go past that. And I went on, in spite of what he said, I went on and enrolled in West Philadelphia Community College. I flunked out of that. And then I accepted my call to ministry subsequent to that. And my pastor suggested I go to Virginia Union. And when I got to Virginia Union, they realized that I had a reading impairment and I couldn't comprehend. So I couldn't read, essentially. And so they said, well, we'll give you a conditional matriculation and we'll put you in remediation for a year. If you do well, you can stay. And that becomes my story. I did well. I stayed and went on to Yale, went on to United, went on around the world as secretary, served on the Central Committee of the World Council of Churches, all of that. And then 35 years later, the student who was given matriculation, conditional matriculation into the university, becomes the chairman of the board, and every degree has my signature on it from Virginia Union. Yeah, that's a complete miracle. Yeah, that's grace, Doc. That's grace. You know, that's grace.
Now stay there for a minute. Now, what do you point to that helps people to understand why you were not going to be totally satisfied as a local church pastor, and that there was something in you pushing you for national church positions, corporate board presence, running for the presidency of and serving as the general secretary of the largest African-American convention on the planet? Mm-hmm. It could have been that W. Franklyn Richardson had been a satisfied local church pastor, just taking care of his members and doing the custodial stuff that we pastors do, but not you. Where did it come from? What stoked that? How did you feed it?
I think it's right in that story. I think it's in the story of awakening. When I realized that I could achieve, and when I realized that I could go to college, that I could operate in that forum, my appetite was awakened. And so I found myself wanting to take advantage of every opportunity that came my way, what I saw. I had, let me tell you, Billy, before I went to Virginia Union, I never saw a Black teacher, Black doctor, a black lawyer. I went to Virginia Union, and the whole situation was run by black people. The president was black. The professors were black. It was a black organization. The middle-class black people were in that circle. And that was an awakening of what was possible. You see, I believe that you cannot be what you cannot see. And so they gave me inspiration to push the boundaries, right? And that's how I evolved. I didn't sit back when I was in my high school days and say, I'm going to be this to be that. I just began on the journey with an awakening, with an eye-opening to opportunity, with the confidence poured into me by Virginia Union that I could go into any arena. Even though I had been set back, I still could go into any arena. And so that kind of confidence poured in me by, many of our young people don't achieve because they are not people pouring into them and saying to them, you can achieve. They get locked into wherever they are. And I guess for me, if you ask me what the central thing of what is responsible for whatever achievements I've had, it has been because I have come upon tremendous mentors in my journey. Mentors, I owe it to a host of mentors who poured into me, who encouraged me, who nurtured me. The first mentor being my mama. And then on through the journey, the Lord sent people in who opened the door at the right time. And there is a litany of people that I talk about in the book who are responsible for where I have been landed. From the local pastor in Philadelphia, Hamlin, to the president of Virginia Union, Alex James, to the foreign mission secretary of National Baptist, to T.J. Jemison, to Gardner Taylor, to Sandy Ray. I mean, just a host of people. Earl Graves, who became a very personal friend, a member of our church, who opened up the corporate arena on my behalf. So I ended up being in corporate boards because he saw and mentored me into that growth. So I am indeed, that for me, I would say to people who are developing their lives, find and nurture mentors. Find and nurture mentors. Let me tell you a quick mentor story. Sandy Ray, great Dr. Sandy Ray, Cornerstone Church in Brooklyn, was president of the Empire State Convention, vice president of the National Baptist Convention. And Mrs. Ray, who was his wife, she was from Philadelphia. Her son, Talmadge Owens, was a classmate of mine. When I got to New York, we connected that information. She pulled me in as a member of the family, and Dr. Ray became a mentor to me. And consequently, when Dr. Ray died, I wrote Dr. Ray's, I edited and put together his book, Journey Through the Jungle. And then when he died, he never saw the book finished. He saw the galley proofs. But when he died, she came to me and told me that I know the importance of a moment, because I was reluctant to speak at the funeral. But I went on, that's what she said. And when I finished speaking, Gardner Taylor preached the funeral, I did the minister's tribute. And when I finished, and the funeral was over, T.J. Jemison, who was the general secretary of the National Baptist Convention at that time, came over to me and said, Franklyn, you lost your mentor today. I said, yes, sir, doctor. He said, I'm going to pick you up.
Wow.
Now that's a mentor story, right? That's what has to happen, and that's what we have to pour into our young pastors. That the key to successful ministry is to be mentored. Many young preachers get on the wrong track because they think that they have to do it all themselves. They have to invent. No need of you living the mistakes that other people have made if you can know them and avoid them, and know the blueprint for going forward. So it's been that kind of mentored energy, Billy, that has ushered me to whatever platforms I have found opportunity to serve.
Yeah, and you've done that. I mean, you actually have incarnated the very thing that was so instrumental in your own development. I think I met you when I was 30 years old as a young pastor, and here we are 24 years later, and I run into you in the airports and sit next to you at conventions and stuff, and you've been consistent throughout. So I think how we're mentored also determines the way we mentor others.
I know that's right.
Yes. Now, I want to switch for 1 second, though, because we preachers can get stuck in the whole milieu of ministry. But I don't want it to be ignored that you've had such a cross-pollination. And I want anybody who gets a chance to see this interview particularly to know the value of your memoirs for leadership development across several disciplines. So talk a minute about why somebody in corporate would find A Witness to Grace helpful for how they manage, how they supervise, how they function as a corporate executive, whatever their levels are in the corporate structure. Why would it be important outside of the sphere of ministry?
Well, that is a challenging thing, Billy, for me, because I have come to corporate involvement and activity through the prism of my ministry, for instance. I have never seen anything that I did, not an extension or a way to do ministry. I guess one of the, Y.T. Walker, who was a mentor to me, opened up to me the possibility. He put global consciousness on me. And he led me to see that ministry can take you to any sphere. Right. All right. So when I work on corporate, when I was working on corporate boards, as I worked on corporate boards, I always viewed my being there to be an extension of ministry. So I was always the advocate. Sometimes I end up preaching in the boardroom. I always was the advocate for the people who couldn't get in the room. I saw myself as an advocate for challenging corporations to be just, to be engaged in justice. So when I was on Pepsi-Cola's board, the whole agenda was, how do we get Black people into corporate America? How do they rise up to the C-suite? How do they, today I'm on the board of Comcast, the same kind of activities that I'm there. I'm not just there to pick up a check. I'm not just there to another stepping stone to my career. I'm there as a place to do ministry that very few Black pastors get an opportunity to do. And so for me, I'm there advocating. I'm understanding the corporate culture, but I'm also bringing to it and challenging them for accountability for the people that they make their money off of. Right. So I get it. So that has been very critical. So anybody who comes to this book will understand that what I've tried to do is, as a leader, is to always be accountable to the people I served, always try to operate with the integrity, try to be free to speak truth, never to be owned, but always available to speak truth. And it is the local congregation that has given me the freedom and the authority to operate in this milieu, right? And every day I spent as general secretary, it was undergirded by the Grace Church in Mount Vernon, where I serve. Every day I serve on a corporate board. Every aspect of my life was always undergirded by a strong congregation who gave me the freedom. They understood. Grace saw itself in the corporate boardroom when I was in the corporate board. They didn't see just the pastors over there doing a side job. Or when I was general secretary, we was general secretary. It was always a partnership of the congregation and the entity and myself.
And so, I think those are very key, critical leadership components that go beyond ministry. Right. Ministry was where it was stoked for you, where the flames began to be stoked for you. But I think it goes so far beyond ministry. And more importantly, in the context we're living in now, where leadership has become so toxified and diluted, when you talk about integrity and bringing other people along, and my fraternity, we say lifting as we climb, when those are kind of your leadership principles, then ethics and morality and spirituality kind of go along with that. I want to take one commercial break just to say Cyber Monday is coming up this coming Monday. And one of the reasons we're pushing so hard this week is because we really want you to go on and get Dr. Franklyn's book, A Witness to Grace, because we want to hit real hard on Cyber Monday, make sure that we get as many purchases and downloads as possible. As you can see, we're talking about a person who has such a robust life, memoirs that are important for us, for just staying faithful to the journey, being encouraged that no matter where you start, you can finish in a way that not only gives God glory, but that radically changes people's lives, pushes the needle of a whole culture forward, So Cyber Monday, we want to make sure you get that book. And I'm going to give Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson a chance at the end to express all the other platforms where you may be able to access his book. So let's go down into the weeds for just a second. Define grace for everybody.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing. I do that in the opening of the book. When I talk about grace, I'm not talking about it in the restricted sense of theological salvific issue, meaning, unmerited favor towards salvation narrative. Really, I'm talking about something bigger than that. I'm talking about how God infuses into human life opportunity that we have not earned. And it's bigger than salvation. It's the existence of life, the rising of the sun, the dancing of the moon, gentle breeze, flowers blossoming. It begins in that, the givens of the Creator, the things God gives us, and then that continues in all of our lives. We all have a sense in which we can see where God continues in our lives, and that the things we take for granted are really gifts of God's grace. Who deserves the sun to rise? Who owns that? It's a part of the condition of our humanity that God has embraced us and made possible his resources for us. So that's when I talk about grace, I'm talking about a bigger picture. While I do affirm, God knows, salvific grace, but I'm talking about grace as extended, that grace, the grace that can be acknowledged by even a person who is a non-believer. Not just us as Christians, but the non-believer, if his or her eyes are open, can behold the grace of God. And if they behold it, that very well may be the vehicle that brings them to a relationship with God.
Yeah. I see that. That's so powerful. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the wider definition of grace. And again, I want to keep pressing it. I think that just it becomes a magnet, not just for people who are trying to use your book for devotional material or for spiritual maturation, but also for wonderful life skills and life viewpoints. You have one of the widest, most eclectic viewpoints I've ever met. I mean, we've sat at so many tables, had so many conversations that have touched on so many topics. And it's very clear that you've not only been well-read, and you've also had company with a whole lot of varied people, but that you intentionally nurture your life to be well-rounded. Art and travel and ministry and sports and being interested in what other people are doing. What are you doing now that's kind of feeding Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson's life?
Well, I kind of find myself revisiting the things and perfecting the things that I have attempted to taste while I've gone forward, right? So I continue, you mentioned art, I still continue to be a great appreciator of African-American art. I spend a lot of time near the water. That's been very therapeutic for me. I will say this too, you talk about being helpful to people who are developing careers. Understand the importance of taking time to renew. Avoid burnout. Spend time, don't apologize for it, don't be guilty. Some of our pastors are guilty, feel guilty when they leave and go on and take a break. Right? They can't justify it. I'm telling you, that is destructive behavior.
Right.
The whole biblical notions of Jesus and his activities reinforce the need for renewal. We have to get away and recover. And we're human beings. We're not machines. And we abuse ourselves when we don't. So one of the things I've continued to do, and I probably do more now I'm older, is that I'm intentional about getting rest. I'm intentional about downtime, because I've discovered downtime pays dividends. It makes you much more creative. It makes you fresher and gives you energy. So I am. That's one thing I'm doing, is I'm trying to pass that on as well to preachers. You got to learn how to relax and de-stress. Very critical. I also find it important to have appreciation for the opportunities life presents you. You know, this one of the things I live with is I'm clear that this is no dress rehearsal, that this is the real shot. And whatever you're going to do, you got to do it now, and you got to pay attention to the opportunities and the graces that God puts in your life. And because it's a short window.
Yeah.
And this has been reinforced by the pandemic that we are experiencing these days. And all of us as people have seen our loved ones leave us, and we are confronted by their departure with our own vulnerability.
Talk about the ways that people can access the book.
Well, primarily what we're doing for Cyber Monday, and that's really what I want to emphasize, is we're doing Amazon that will hopefully lead to us getting the book's recognition to a place of bestseller at Amazon and at New York Times. But we're focused on Amazon. There are some other places, but you know, there's a system by which they orchestrate that. And so the best way for us to assure that we get credit is for it. We also have reduced, the publishers have reduced, Church Line and I, we've reduced the price for just for Cyber Monday.
Okay.
From $27 to $16.95. So that people can, we really want to make it, and in addition to that, 10% of everything that we are, proceeds we get from the book is going to HBCUs. One of the chapters I have in the book says, how do I say thank you?
So part of media is to make sure that people hear things. Did you say 10% of all the proceeds that go to the book are going to be directly given to HBCUs?
Exactly. That's exactly what I said.
Okay. And that there's a discount on Cyber Monday, that singular day, there's a discount where the book is going to be offered at lesser price than what the regular retail price is going to be following Cyber Monday.
Right.
And your hope is that on Monday, there is a big push of the book, right? So that you can have your memoirs competing with other books that are launching on Cyber Monday as well.
Right.
I want to encourage my entire platform. Those of you who follow me on any social media platform, those of you who have been connected to or engaged in my ministry over the last 31 years, you hear me talk about certain people who have been influencers in my life. And the gentleman with whom I'm enjoying conversation today is one of those significant influencers. I would have not thought about business or entrepreneurial ventures, mixing and merging faith with what it means to have institutional leadership and positioning. So much of my courage for ministry has come from watching examples like Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson. He's not only been a mentor, he's been a person who John Bryant used to say, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a copycat as long as you copying the right cat. And I've been copying this cat for a long time. And I'm talking about everything from style and dress to the way you handle national positions to floating and managing and stewarding entrepreneurial ventures and ministry. That's how influential he's been. And I want to encourage you to make sure you access this book, A Witness to Grace. Can I tell you that we're really connected by stories? That's really all we are. We're just nothing more than our story. His story is so inspirational. You want to be connected to it. Doc, I want to thank you for the time that you've provided today to just let me introduce you to people who are in my sphere. And I'm praying that your book has extended access. I'm praying that it blesses millions of people's lives. And I'm praying that you are refreshed and rewarded by the chance to have shared your memoirs with the world.
Thank you, Doc. We appreciate you so much, and continue to do what you're doing. You're a blessing to our people.
I appreciate it. A Witness to Grace, the Reverend Dr. W. Franklyn Richardson. Get it, Cyber Monday. Let's make sure that we access that book on Amazon.
Witness to Grace, a testimony of favor, is available for purchase. Get your copy today from Amazon